Good afternoon, everyone. Just seeing if we're reaching critical mass, almost. All right, I think we might be there. We're very close. Thank you everyone for joining us. I'd like to call to order today's TPCC meeting of this November 16, 2021. To begin with, let's do roll call. Bella, would you be so kind as to call the roll for us?
Sure can. All right. Dave Strohmeyer.
Here.
Mirta Becerra. John Engine.
I'm here, thanks.
Don MacArthur. Debbie Johnston. Here. Lucia Oliveira. Josh Slotnick. Tung Pam.
It's Toon Pham here.
Oh, thank you for correction. And Bob Boson.
Here.
Thank you. That's all.
All right, Aaron, if I'm not mistaken, we still do not have a quorum here.
I have 5 out of 9. So
You got
technically,
5?
Yeah.
Yep, and looks like we just have Don MacArthur joining us, so we should have a quorum now.
Okay,
Noted.
excellent. We are ready to rock and roll here. So to begin with, we have minutes to approve. Are there any corrections or additions from our last meeting minutes? Okay, seeing none. Without objection, those minutes will stand approved as presented. Is there any public comment on items not on today's agenda? And we do have one letter from the Schilling neighborhood. Aaron, any thoughts on this or Mering? And I'm assuming since this was directed at both TPCC and the city council that the city has probably responded to this. It's a little outside the wheelhouse of those of us here today.
Yeah,
Happy to take it in ours.
yeah, and I will say that I've been in contact with the individuals who submitted the letter. It's in part in response to, I think, some development projects at the city level. And you're right, I think it's at least partially outside the wheelhouse of TTAC and TPCC or the MPO to address issues at this scale. And so we'll follow up with those residents and make sure that their concerns are addressed and figure out how sort of where those improvements fall in our broader prioritization for funding at both the city and the MPO level.
Great, thanks for doing that, Aaron.
Yep.
All right, today we've got a couple of special presentations, but before we get to that, we've got a number of items of new business, and to get right to it, our first item is to review and approve, potentially consider approval of amendment number 1 to the long range transportation plan. Dave or Charlie, which one of you want to lead off?
I'm going to go.
Yeah, this is Dave Gray, transportation planner with the MPO, and Charlie's going to run the show, and I'll present the first item.
All right.
So the first item that we have is a straightforward amendment to the long range transportation plan that moves 2 projects from illustrative to committed because of funding that has become available since the long range plan was adopted. The first project, go ahead, Charlie, thanks, is the Lewis and Clark Drive shared use path, which basically connects up Highway 93 to the new school in Lolo. So that was granted TA funding, and you can see the funding amount being $855,000 with the remaining it was awarded $988,000 and 855 being the federal share, and the remaining will be local match. So this does not impact the fiscal constraint of the long range plan in general. And I'm happy to answer any questions. It's simply a safe linkage between 93 and the new school.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, this will be a great project. Questions?
Yeah, this is Josh. Where does the other 100,000 plus come from?
I believe it's coming from the county
That
at
would
some
be
What I
level.
thought you were going to say.
And that would be your salary, Josh.
I thought you were headed that way, Dave.
Right. So it is a county project. So I'm not sure exactly how it's how the local match is gonna come about, but it would be through the county at some level.
Okay, we're on it. Other questions? Or I'd entertain a motion.
Well, we need to keep going through the second project.
Oh, okay. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Okay.
I appreciate that thought, but go ahead, Shirley. So the second project in the amendment is rehabilitation of the Orange Street Tunnel. The project cost is $14 million, 12 million of which is coming through federal bridge funding, and the remaining roughly 2 million will be provided through state funding. That's a rehab of the tunnel. What that looks like has yet to be determined. So presumably it will be upgrading the sidewalks and lighting and doing a lot of rehab on the concrete structure. I believe that includes retaining walls on each end. And if Vicky wants to chime in if I got any of that wrong, that would be it. It won't be a full replacement of the tunnel. It'll be a full rehab though.
Vicky?
Oh, you'd think I could unmute faster, but I have nothing to add because I don't know much about this project. I would toss that to Bob.
Bob?
And I was afraid you were going to do that, Vicky. Also, I know that it is a project that we're getting started with, but as far as if there's anything further beyond as described, I can't commit to that at this point. I apologize for not being fully in the know on this one. I know it's something that our Bridge Bureau is aware of, and Jacqueline, our pre-construction engineers, been working on, but very early in the process also.
Dave, so if I'm hearing you correctly, there would not be any expansion of the tunnel through there such that there would be more space for higher vehicles. So in other words, it's not going to shave off any of the elevation to accommodate. Wow, the hands are flying up. Aaron and Marengan. Aaron? You're muted, Aaron.
Yep, I can defer to the mayor because he may be ready to say the same things I am, but I can chime in.
I'm reasonably sure that we are, Aaron, and I'll you pick up anything I miss. So this project was a topic of conversation during a team meeting we had this morning, and because it is sort of early days here, I'm certainly going to support the notion of moving this to a committed project. We continue to believe that that facility is, I don't want to minimize what's happening here, but there's a little bit of a lipstick on a pig thing happening here, and we want to continue those conversations, particularly in light of infrastructure bill and some of the opportunities we have. That facility has storm drainage problems that are significant. And it certainly has bicycle and pedestrian facility issues that are really challenging. So we hope to keep this sort of on the burner in terms of design and scope, given that we may have some opportunity to do this better, because if we're going to spend $14 million, that's probably the last $14 million we'll spend in 50 years, and we certainly have an interest in doing it right. And if I missed something, Aaron, please plug in.
Nope, I think that's largely what I was going to say. The only thing I'd add is that this long range plan amendment and then our subsequent TIP amendment essentially get this on the funding calendar, if you will. And then that I think is really what gets us started on the scoping and have the opportunity to look at really what we need to do here, what we have the funding for, and then figuring out ways to fill that gap, whether it's through the infrastructure bill or some other creative way. So I think this is really the first step to get this project off the ground.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, that's, I think, spot on. It would be, in my estimation, a lost opportunity if we did not accomplish what we really want to see on the ground for the next half a century. But today's action seems entirely appropriate. Other comments?
I like all I did. Let's just get a whole new pig rather than put lipstick on the old pig.
There's already some lipstick on it right now, as you can see in the photo. So other questions, comments? Anything else, Dave?
Yeah, go ahead to the next slide, please, Charlie. So what this will look like in the long range plan, these illustrative projects will take their places in the committed project list, and Appendix L will represent the updated committed projects. There is no impact to air quality conformity, and as I mentioned before, the fiscal constraint is retained through the funding that's been described for each one of the projects. And with that, we could entertain a motion.
Now is the time.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, been moved by Mariangan, seconded by Don MacArthur. Any further discussion on the motion or comment? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that passes.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Dave. On to the next, and does not get much more exciting than this. We have a motion that would approve and revise the MPO's self-certification process. It looks like Charlie, are you going to talk to us about this?
Yeah, this can be handled by me, Aaron. So the self-certification update came out of MDT's recent review of MPO, and FHWA's review of MPO, and they suggested that we improve our self-certification process that was previously included in the adoption of new tips as well as amendments of tips. There was previously text that showed the various regulations that we uphold as an organization. So we thought we would aim to improve upon this, and I'll have Aaron speak to some of the background on the self-certification, then I'll get into further detail on how we plan to improve this process.
Thanks, Charlie. Aaron?
Yeah, so if this is maybe a surprise or unfamiliar to any of you on TPCC, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised. We've had our self-certification, which is a federal requirement for the MPO, sort of tucked away in the Transportation Improvement Program. It's the last page, and it outlines generally what federal regulations we are required to certify that we are meeting, and then has a signature line that has previously been the Director of Development Services when the MPO was under that department, and then more recently, Jeremy Keene is the Public Works and Mobility Director when the MPO staff and administration moved into that department. When we did our review with our MPO process review with FHWA and MDT, this is we talked a lot about the tip and ways that we can improve that document. And the self-certification was one of those topics. And there are a couple of things to note here. One is that we are required to self-certify as, whenever we have, as part of the adoption of any new transportation improvement program. We have not really focused on this element of that in the past when we're approving new tips. And so that's something that maybe is less transparent for the public and for this committee, quite frankly. And the second element there is that with the signature by the Public Works and Mobility Director is really a delegation of TPCC's authority to self-certify. And I don't think we have made that clear in recent adoptions, certainly not in the last 8 to 10 years. And so this is a really good opportunity for us to just make this a little bit more transparent, have it be an opportunity. It's still one of those pieces that is a routine process of being an MPO. But there are some important aspects to this that we are certifying, we are meeting federal regulations. I'm confident that we are doing that in the work that we do, but it's good to make that express decision that we are certifying that we're meeting those regulations at the appropriate time. And so we've outlined a process here that we think will improve upon our current process. It's not necessarily making it any more stringent or time consuming, but it will just be more upfront in the self-certification. And I'll let Charlie walk through that. But really, we want to take this past process, bring it more to the forefront and simplify it in some ways and just make it a standard part of our process so that we can have the conversations at least if we need to. So
Aaron, before Charlie continues, Commissioner Slotnick, you have your
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, so Aaron, this is new to me, being relatively new to the TPCC. Can you describe what is this self-certification? And is there some sort of third party that steps in and verifies that we've done it right, or is this all kind of Scout's honor?
Well, it's not necessarily Scout's honor. It would be FHWA would be responsible, and NMDT is sort of the state transportation organization, would step in. If we were not meeting any of these, they would certainly let us know. And part of that is through our MPO process review. We talk through some of these different regulatory steps and what we're doing and how we could do it better, or if we're not meeting the actual intent of the law, that they would certainly be the third party, if you will, that would let us know that and get us to remedy any regulations that we're not following.
So does FHWA send the MPO like a list of questions and you have to answer them? Or how does, I just give me a little background on how this works.
Yeah, well, with the self-certification, I think this is part of when we submit a tip, we send in the self-certification and we're saying we're meeting these regulations. So you'll note in the resolution that we attached, there's a whole list of, and Charlie's going to go through the specifics of what's covered in those different federal regulations. And I see Ryan has his hand up and he'll probably describe this better, but ultimately, FHWA would ensure that we have the self-certification. And then the MPO process review happens every 3 years. And during that point, we have, sit down for 2 days and FHWA staff and MDT staff review all of our planning documents and our processes and go through them and just to make sure we are meeting all of the intents and purposes of these regulations. So, Ryan, did you have anything to add to that? Hopefully that answers your question, Josh, but Ryan, anything?
I guess I'm reading between the lines more than I'm seeing the lines clearly, but that's okay.
I think Charlie's going to highlight those lines momentarily. But Ryan, did you have anything you wanted to interject right now, or shall we hear Charlie out first and then?
No, I think we can. Yeah, I think we can let Charlie move on. Okay. I was actually going to say just what Aaron ended up saying right at the end there is that, yeah, I mean, that's the MPO planning process review is when we would actually, check all these regulatory references to make sure that they're being done. And, as Aaron pointed out, while we did find some things during the process review, I don't recall anything specific about these items necessarily that we found as deficiencies. We really just want to make sure that the process is done correctly here. And I might have some more comments at the end, but I'll let Charlie go on and see if any of those are still outstanding at that point.
Thanks, Ryan. Charlie?
Thank you all. All right, so part of self-certification is that we're going to go through the various federal requirements that we uphold as a metropolitan planning organization. So I'm going to get into those in depth now. So we have general planning requirements, and this has to, these lay out sort of how we operate as an MPO and what we do in the production of our transportation improvement program, as well as our long-range transportation plan, in coordination with our boards, with TPCC being one of them and the leading decision-making body that we have. So we aim to serve mobility needs of people, freight, foster economic growth and development within, between state and urbanized areas. Another large responsibility of ours is upholding, aiming to keep our planning area within air quality attainment. So we are in attainment right now as an MPO, and in the production of our long-range transportation plan projects that are funded and committed, we run them through an air quality model to determine if they will either maintain or improve upon our area's air quality markers. Large part of our planning process is upholding non-discrimination processes. So Title VI out of the Civil Rights Act is something that we operate under through Montana Department of Transportation's Title VI program and Office of Civil Rights. And I think one way that we most directly address this is through prioritization of projects based off of spatial markers of neighborhood qualities. Secondly, there's more non-discrimination clauses, with a large one being Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. So you can think about how we construct projects with the latest ADA designs included. When requested, we include hearing impaired assistance with our Zoom meetings and ensure that all in-person engagement opportunities are ADA accessible, and if requested, provide direction for access. This expands to the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which expands upon discrimination with individuals for disabilities based on age. We also include non-discrimination in project contracts. So this is fulfilled through various clauses that ensure that we are not discriminating in project contracts, and it's written into the city and MDT's clauses for federal aid projects. So our self-certification process that we plan to promote and have passed is to add descriptive text to our self-certification resolution, which we have one of those attached to the agenda, and we can share that shortly if you all are interested. We can read through it and see what you all think. If there's any changes, we're happy to make them. We want to establish a separate self-certification adoption process with the adoption of new fiscal year tips. So this time we're going to hopefully have the self-certification adopted with an amendment, but generally for a new fiscal year tips, when we do potentially the FY 2023 to 27, then we would undergo another self-certification process, or where we would walk through the various requirements that we uphold and how we fulfill them. And then we'd like to remove the Public Works and Mobility's director's signature and replace with the TPCC chair as the official approval for the self-certification statement. Are you all interested in reviewing the self-certification resolution, as the motion would be to sign off on said resolution at the end of this presentation section?
Anybody want to see that? Go ahead and bring it up on the screen, Charlie, and
Yeah.
we can entertain questions.
I guess, well, Charlie's bringing that up. Just again, one of the ultimate goals here is to have a process that is a little bit more transparent, that it's not just a list of the regulations at the back of the tip that gets signed when we adopt the tip, but we would have this resolution that has a little bit more narrative, describes in brief what's contained in each, or what each one of those regulations is intended to address. And then this would be submitted to MDT and FHWA along with any new tip that we adopt. And then that would just be our self-certification for the year or 2 years or however long we have. I think we are legally or required to do this once every 4 years. But if we're adopting a new tip, it doesn't really take much effort to adopt a new self-certification. And we don't really intend this to be a really laborious process where we have to go through in detail everything we're doing to meet each one of these regulations, but have that opportunity to intentionally look at it once a year, make sure we're all comfortable with self-certifying, particularly this committee, since you are all the ones who are officially self-certifying for the MPO, and making this statement that we're meeting these regulations. So it's an opportunity to have the conversation if we want to go into more depth on these, or if anything comes up that we think we might want to address. It gives us that opportunity, but we don't necessarily have to make it more than a, here's a self-certification, here's generally what we're doing as an MPO and how we're meeting this, and then let's adopt that and be done with it for the year. So that's the intention anyways.
Ryan, is there anything that you'd like to add?
Well, yeah, I guess I would say, like so much of what comes from the feds, I want to be careful to describe accurately what things are requirements and what things are useful or best practices, whatever term of art is in style these days. I mean, I think that what came up during the review in particular, what is kind of in the shall category is that the signature line that was on that tip page, that person was not formally delegated the responsibility or the authority to make that certification on behalf of this body, the PCC. So that is the bare minimum that needs to be corrected, is just to handle that delegation of authority or just remove it. There's a lot of leeway if you go beyond that, a lot of flexibility on how the MPO can accomplish this. And then beyond that, I think there's all kinds of things in the area of best practices or useful practices that you could choose to do to make this more value added or more meaningful. I mean, I think that we're all prone to some degree, at least sometimes, to kind of let these things that we do as a matter of routine kind of wash over us without ever really pausing to reflect on the substance of it. So I think what Aaron and Charlie and the team have put together here is good in that, well, for one, it solves the actual finding where the delegation of authority needs to be, again, either corrected or removed, but also adds, I think, an appropriate level of effort to kind of, again, just kind of create a trigger at least once a year to pause at least a little bit to think about this stuff. As Aaron correctly pointed out, I mean, a lot of these things that, whatever thought went into developing the right types of practices to make sure this gets done years ago are probably still in place. And I don't think there's any huge substantive concerns with most of these items, or really any of them. But again, to the extent that you can create a trigger to kind of reaffirm that, or for new staff that come and go, new committee members that come and go, to, again, where appropriate, every once in a while, pause and, well, what does that reg actually mean? So it's an educational opportunity, if nothing else, in that regard. So, right. So that's what I would say. Again, I think the staff has done a good job accomplishing both goals in this case.
Thanks, Ryan. Other questions, comments from the committee? All right, well, I would entertain a motion, and that would be that TPC approve the revised MPO self-certification process as proposed. Don't all go at once.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion or public comment on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. And our third and final bit of new business today is to review and potentially approve amendment number 1 to the FY 22 to 26 TIP. Charlie.
Thank you all. All right, so this is the first tip for our FY 2022 to 2026 tip. This amendment includes some document updates as well as project updates. The document updates include information related to transit asset management and transit safety plan targets. There's also been an addition of the FTA 5339 discretionary funding table to display how Mountain Line has used those discretionary funds. We have several other minor document updates I'm going to list out but not show in the presentation. So Mountain Line provided us with an updated transit asset management targets table that shows the TIP timeframe. So the one that was provided in the previous TIP document did not reach out to FY 2026 timeframe. And this just general shows the sort of target range that is aimed to keep various transit system assets in place. The next update related to transit targets is the safety plan. So as of July 2018, FTA introduced a requirement for transit agencies to create a safety plan, a performance-based safety plan. And as of July of 2021, I believe this was required to be represented in various TIPs. So we're fulfilling that now. And this represents the safety targets that Mountain Line system aims to uphold. This is the FTA 5339 discretionary funding table that's now included in the TIP document. It shows that over $3.6 million will be committed in FY 2023 to buses and bus stop amenities project section. Minor document changes include taking out an outdated acronym for TEA 21. So nothing major there. Minor text reference was updated in the transit asset management section. There's a little typo there. There's a TIP funding table directions. So there's a directions and how to read the TIP tables, and the time horizon year markers were updated to be in alignment with this TIP horizon. The project list has several updates that include more up-to-date project details. The footnotes that are included underneath project tables that show the various funding sources and breakdowns have been updated to latest information. We have updated our public comment dates for the fiscal years of this TIP, and we have removed the self-certification text that previously existed in old TIPs. And in the adoption of new TIPs, we will include the self-certification resolution text that was shown in the previous agenda item. So let's get into the project updates. The first project update section is congestion mitigation and air quality. And we have an increase in carryover funds shown in the red circle above in FY 2022 of just over $400,000. We have an increase of $500,000 in FY 22 for the replace and lease street sweepers project. And this is just representative that those funds were not used in FY21 and are now reflected and transferred for commitment in FY 2022. The next funding section has 3 updates, so this will be covered in 3 slides. Is Surface Transportation Program Urban. So the first change is that in the STPU borrow, the maximum borrow is being reflected for FY 2025, and this maximum borrow is just over 3 fiscal years of allocation. And those funds are committed in the later section I will describe. So the next change, TPU, is an increase of almost $30,000 in FY 2022 for construction. And this is representative of shown changes for increase in walkthrough inspections, completion of material certification, and a review of the final project document. The last change for the STPU funding section is an increase of almost $1.8 million. And this is based off of the increase for the STPU borrow. And this does not reflect an increase for the project budget, but just generally reflects how the funding allocation is being committed for this year from the newly represented borrow for FY 2025. The next funding section is National Highways. Hello?
Was there a question there? Go ahead, Charlie.
Okay. The next change is in National Highways, and the change represented is the preliminary engineering was shifted from the Russell Street Dakota to Mount UPN 4128004 to the larger sort of entire project ID for Russell Street. So those funds for preliminary engineering were used not just to the project limits of Russell Street, Dakota to Mount. There's been no increase or change in the funds. It's just a project section shift. And then we have the same funds for right-of-way and construction that have been committed to that specific funding section, Dakota to Mount. The next increase or next project change is for the build grant section. So we previously had the Mullen project phase 2 represented in the TIP document, and we decided to remove this as there's no identified funding source. And it seems improper to include a second section when we haven't had an identified funding source, although we do have an idea of what the project would look like, and it would require a second phase for completion. The next change, and this update comes out of the city, has a shift from our preliminary engineering. So preliminary engineering was shifted from pre-FY 2022 to fiscal year 2022 and has seen an increase of just over $1 million. And this is all being made up by local funds. And the shift, I'm sure, can be explained in more, or the need for the increase in funds I'm sure can be explained by city staff on the call. And then secondly, the federal funds of $13 million have been shifted from pre-FY 2022 to FY 2022 and FY 2023. Now we have some transit funding section changes. So there has been an addition of ARPA federal funds of just over $3 million to the FY 2022 revenue section, and an addition of the 5311 transfer state from federal share of almost $1.4 million shown in the revenue section circled here. This funding section has also seen changes. One of the first one of those changes is a bus passenger amenities addition of $180,000 shown in that upper circle, and that's committed to the planning for transit operations. There has been also an addition of $20,000 committed to the replace supervisory vehicle project section. And then transit operations has seen increase of that $1.4 million from the 53 transfer. So that has been committed to the operating costs in the transit operations project section for FY 2022. So as per usual with our TIP amendments, we follow what is laid out in our public participation plan. We have released legal advertisements on the Missoulian and provided information on our website. The legal advertisement prior to TPCC has been up for 5 Sundays. And we have been open to creating any sort of needs for attendance that come our way, and we have not received any request for accommodations. So I would like to entertain a motion, as Commissioner Strohmeyer says, for this amendment, if there is no questions.
Any questions from the committee on the proposed TIP amendment? Or comments? Or a motion? One of the two options before us.
I would move we approve the FFY 2022-2026 TIP amendment as proposed.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Slotnick, seconded by Bob Boson. Any further discussion on the motion or public comment? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions, just for the heck of it? No. Okay, very good. We are done with our business, new business for today. We've got a couple of special presentations, and I'm not sure who all is presenting on Missoula growth policy. Aaron, is there someone here for this? I'm not seeing Ben Brewer's name on the list.
No, we have these two items of old business, and neither of which I think we'll get to today because the presenters were not available. So we're going to keep those on old business and bring them back. Neither one of them is particularly time constrained, and so I think that's okay. So if it's good with the committee, we will just keep those on as old business and bring them back as we have time in December or January.
Absolutely. These are teasers.
Yeah.
Look forward to hitting these up at some future date. So I guess with that, any other announcements or anything else for the good of the order? Aaron, anything?
I'll let the mayor go. Mayor Engen go first since he's got his hand up.
Okay, I lost his picture, but I see the jaundiced hand there. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I have no idea what happened to my video, but most people prefer that image of me anyway. So thank you. So with the chair's indulgence and with the cooperation of our partners here, I would like to propose an agenda item for our next meeting, and that is if we could have some help understanding infrastructure bills impact on the MPO moving forward. I had a conversation with Senator Tester's office earlier today, and a lot of the process remains a little bit nebulous, but most speculation is that that in the transportation arena, these dollars will flow into traditional buckets and go through traditional processes that we all use. But clearly, the number I heard from Senator Tester's office today was roughly $5 billion And that goes a long way over the course of 5 years to alter or accelerate our work in our community. So if our friends at those departments would be inclined to give us their impressions of how we move forward together, I would be grateful.
Yeah, that's an excellent idea. Merita and Aaron and I had a similar discussion just a few days ago about trying to get ahead of the curve on this. So yeah, let's plan on putting that on the agenda for next month.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. And I can get with Vicky and Ryan. Maybe we can put our heads together and see what the best available info is that's out there.
That sounds great, Aaron. I am concerned that December might be a little soon, that, you know, it would be just vague enough to be irritating and not give you good info. So maybe January might
Fine
be
with
better.
me.
Sure. Let the dust settle a little bit and let's do it in January to kick off the new year.
Would have made a nice Christmas present, I guess, for TPCC ahead of time, but
Well, if you
Run it
stumble
late.
on any juicy nuggets that
Yeah.
are pre-Christmas worthy, let's do that in December too. So, okay.
Well, and I'm excited to hear the number the mayor had, because that's substantially greater than the one that was shared with me. So that's good news.
Yeah, and I guess my comment on that is, even those of us in the agency are a little confused, because some of the categories, like for example, resiliency projects, you know, some categorizations of the dollars put that under, say, climate, others put it under roads. So, you know, some of the ways we parse the categories here can change some of those big takeaway numbers. And you know, if the FAST Act is any indication, the agency put out a lot of good information when the FAST Act came out, and I'm sure that we'll be doing something similar with this bill. I can't remember how long it took to generate some of that stuff. Whenever we decide to put this on the agenda, of course, I'll be more than happy to share the best information I have at the time. But there will be better information in the weeks and months ahead, for sure.
Very good. Thanks, Ryan. More to come. Anything else from the committee? All right. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. We'll see you next month.
Thanks,
Thanks, everyone.
everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.